Do you remember watching these shows? Now, fast forward to today. The cartoons we grew up watching feel completely different from the ones children watch today. For the longest time, I thought it was just nostalgia. You know, that feeling where everything from your childhood automatically seems better. We're probably starting to sound like those people who always say, back in my day, things were better. But then I started researching animation design, and I realized there was actual research trying to explain why. And as it turns out, many of these creative choices are intentional. Hi, I'm Monica. I'm a digital animation student who spends a lot of time thinking about animation, not just how it looks, but why it's designed the way it is. It honestly took me about 2 hours to figure out what I wanted to research. But then it hit me, why not combine two things that I'm actually interested in, like animation and psychology? And what I found is that most conversations about children's media often focus on screen time. However, many researchers are beginning to ask a different question. Instead of asking how long children are spending time on their screens, they're asking how children's media is actually designed. Researchers such as Sarah Namasi and Saeed Sadeghi have found that modern children's programs often rely on rapid scene changes, constant movement, fantasy elements, bright colors, and highly stimulating sound design. And no, these aren't accidents. They're intentional design meant to keep the viewer engaged. Because every camera movement, sound effect, and scene transition is a creative decision. So what exactly researchers are studying? One of the biggest concepts I found in my research is something called executive function. What is this fancy psychology concept, you may ask? Don't worry guys, I got you. Executive function is a set of skills that we have, such as paying attention, remembering information, controlling our emotions, switching between tasks, and thinking before acting. And these are skills that are still developing in young children. And then I found the holy grail, a study by Lilar and Peterson, known as a 9-minute experiment. Children were divided into 3 groups. The first group watched a fast-paced cartoon, the second group watched an educational program, and the third group spent the same amount of time drawing. After only 9 minutes, the children who watched the fast-paced cartoon performed worse on executive function tasks compared to the other 2 groups. Now, these weren't difficult tests. Children were asked to follow simple instructions like touching their toes, but instead of touching their toes, they touched their heads. Many of the children who watched the fast-paced cartoon struggled with these tasks. Now, this doesn't immediately mean that cartoons are harmful. It just means that the point of the study wasn't to focus on the amount of screen time in hours. The focus was to know what happens after the 9 minutes of watching a fast-paced cartoon. And then I found another study, and then another. Lahing Fan and his colleagues found that fantastical animation can reduce executive function performance in children. Then I found something even more interesting. Claire Essex and her team used eye tracking technology to observe how toddlers responded to fantastical animation. By that point, I realized all of these researchers are trying to understand one simple thing. How do animation design choices influence children's attention? So what exactly are these researchers looking at? It all comes down to how modern animation is designed. One thing researchers talk about a lot is rapid scene changes. Instead of staying on an image for several seconds, modern children's programs often change scenes very quickly. Another is constant motion. The movement isn't limited to the characters. Objects move, background moves, the camera moves, something is always happening, and it's right at your face. Let's compare these 2 clips for a second.
Like the best honey tree that a bee will ever see.
Notice how the characters like Winnie the Pooh or Tigger stay on the same place for longer. The camera barely moves and there's little to no motion. And if you notice, the colors are also a little bit more muted and they look more calm, right? Now let's compare that to the next scene.
She's going to her haircut now. You can follow along and see how it goes.
Now, what we've seen here, there's constant motion, bright colors, and many things happening at the same time. These are exactly the kind of design characteristics researchers like Sadeghi and Namasi discuss when studying children's attention. Another thing researchers have found is fantasy and visual complexity. Many modern children's programs are often presented with fantasy elements such as impossible environments, exaggerated scenes, bright colors, and multiple visual elements happening at the same time. Then there's sound design, which is a little tricky because it comes from your ears and not your eyes, so it's a little different here. But either way, sound effects, dialogue, and everything else that comes with music is often layered together to create a highly stimulating experience.
show, of course. Today is the really big art show at Blue School, and we get to make stuff for it too.
The show was intentionally designed to give children time to think and respond before moving. And I think it's an interesting piece of television history as well. Now, before anyone thinks I'm telling parents to throw away the TV, researchers still don't know enough to make conclusions about long-term effects, because they are studying if certain animation design choices can influence children's attention and executive function. Now, when it comes to children's media production, I believe that every camera movement, sound effect, and every creative decision taken are important aspects when shaping an audience, especially when it comes to children. I believe that animation is much more powerful than most people realize. I think it's something that not really many think about until someone points it out. For years, I thought modern cartoons simply looked different because animation had evolved. But I realized it's more than that. It's about every creative decision taken before a cartoon reaches a screen, especially for children. So the next time you watch a children's cartoon, look a little closer. Think about it. Because behind every bright color, transition, or sound effect, someone put it there for a reason.